हेलो 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 चेक।
भी 10 बजे की है।
सर एक मिनट भूखे पक रही है। थैंक यू सर।
Distinguished delegates, respected seniors, colleagues from the Election Commission of India, representatives of the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, representatives from the offices of Chief Electoral Officers of Chandigarh, Haryana, Uttarakhand and Odisha. This on ease of identification at ballot. Some of you have joined us virtually from across continents. Others have travelled from across mountains and plains to be a part of this conference. I thank all of you for, as all of you are aware, India currently holds the chairship of the Council of Member States of India. In the space of a few seconds, at the time of casting a vote, confirm reliably that the person in front of them is who they claim to be. If election officials are over-rigid and over-bureaucratic in their approach, the result is delays, long queues, confusion, and exclusion of voters who had every right to vote. Conversely, however, a lowering of reliable standards of verification may lead to impersonation and multiple voting. In both scenarios, the long-term result is casting of a shadow on the electoral process and a slow erosion of public confidence in democracy. Every election management body has to find its own answer to this issue in their own specific demographic, economic, social, cultural and technological context. None of us will arrive at the same answer, and that is precisely the reason all of us here have converged today. Over the past few months, to all practitioners and stakeholders, such as a distinguished gathering here who are involved in addressing similar issues in their own context determines suitability. A role-only system that works in a high-trust democracy based on reliable civil. Our task here today is to understand that context, not flatten it into a league table and make more context-based recommendations. This is what India's chairship of International IDEA and this collaboration between IIIEM and the global electoral community is ultimately about. Not exporting a single model to the world, but building a shared, evidence-based body. Welcome all of you to this stakeholder engagement, and I look forward to the discussions that will follow. Thank you very much.
For improving the voter identification process at the ballot. Now I would like to call on State Nodal Training Officer Sri Munshiram Sharma ji for overview report on ease of identification of ballot.
And distinguished gatherings, district election officers, additional CEO Uttarakhand, representatives of outside state and other participants in the hall, in line and spirit of our worthy Chief Electoral Officer Himachal Pradesh, I, on behalf of training section of the department, welcome all the eminent scholars, academicians, participants to this august gathering and workshop, where again we are here to discuss about the topic and the theme assigned to Himachal Pradesh, that is how easily 25 till 2nd December 2026. In view of that chairship, International Institute of Democracy and Election Management, which is a premier institute, being prepared. So, second is the workshop and overview background. Third is 9-step research methodology. Next is purpose of the workshop and stakeholders. Polling station is where abstract right becomes concrete acts, and every design choice affects and other aspects will be covered across the globe. Responsibility paradigm, how we are working in the chairship of the methodology, stakeholder engagement, drafting and conclusion of the report. And international idea, the role is limited, technical input, access to the information, communication and technology in election topic, and which report will be prepared and thematic lead from IIIEM will coordinate with the CEO thematic team in preparation, writing and conclusion of the report. Then comes the role of academics and technical partners, which are universities, research institutions, will provide research and analytical support and evidence processing without steering practitioner decision. So it's type accepted. There are 68 and India is one of them, in which photo ID or any other document prescribed by the election management body, they are prescribed, those are accepted, and like India we have EPIC, and during the elections, Election Commission notifies the list of other documents that are recognized by the polling staff at the polling station. Concluding and composition of the report, those up to 6 topics we will be preparing the report, and thereafter the report will be reviewed at the purpose of this workshop is the structured research exercise, where qualitative research, not just events to strengthen the thematic reports. We are here to validate our assumptions, if any, and also improve recommendations. Our esteemed, some other by the IIIEM, and our report will combine on the basis of all these stakeholders, whatever inputs they are providing. 20 from Asia Pacific, Latin America 26, and North Africa and Middle East 3 countries. There we are in matters are primary evidence and secondary, and contextual knowledge, how we work, enabling condition, institutional prerequisites, operation, constant.
For which I think we have to start preparation from today onwards. So I'm quite happy that at least the first part, though this is an international conference, but the first part of training management of the department, or whether they are going to be EROs or AROs or ROs, has actually begun. So there are a lot of issues on which all of you need to be aware of in terms of training management, material management, in terms of first level checking of EVMs, sweep. There are issues in terms of ballot paper management, nomination, etc. So there are actually 16 such templates which have been developed by the ECI, which need to be monitored by the DEO, the District Election Officer, who is normally the Deputy Commissioner of the district, or maybe in some cases they also appoint more than only one DEO. And so on. Any discussion on the election would obviously commence with Article 324 of the. So Article 324 basically says that the superintendent's direction and control of the electoral rolls and the conduct of elections would vest with the Election Commission of India. Okay? Then under Article 3 for religion, caste and sex. Or vice versa, it also says that no electoral roll can be prepared exclusively on these three parameters. These provisions were there only to give effect to our secular legislating or encroach on powers which are vested with various other authorities, which is basically the legislatures. But yet they said that yes, in order to give effect to the conduct of elections, etc., you very well need that we must all be aware of basically the 4 statutes which govern our election. Section 8 relates to the consolidation of delimitation orders. Then similarly, Section state. Similarly, 13AA talks of district election officers, and 13B talks of EROs, etc. Officers, ERO, AEROs, etc. Now, the next act which equally one has to be very, very conversant with is the Representation of People's Act 1951. That actually deals with the actual backup candidates of HPC, which is a party by late Mr. Sukram and the Shiv Sena. But as they did not impose Form A and B, and in the simple...
Ma'am Nandita Gupta ji, the Chief Electoral Officer, Himachal. Shri Narinder Chauhan ji, who retired as Additional Chief Secretary and remained CEO also. Additional CEO from Uttarakhand. All the participants, I can see many EROs and other delegates of the conference. I would like to say 2 things before I start. I have been associated with the election process since 2000. That was the year when I conducted my first election, and 2003 was the first election in the country which was conducted through EVMs. I was RO Barmore, a different kind of experience, and in all these years worked in different capacities, remained DO also, acted as a election observer also. But for the first time I am attending a conference where Election Commission is actually talking about something different and something very important, and it's good to see that. 1951, sir very elaborately gave details about particularly 1950 Act specifically talks about have to be drawn, and section 14 to 25 specifically focus on this, and we I think very meticulously follow these rules. And then there is a registration for electoral rolls which prescribe formats, procedures to be followed at various levels. And then conduct of election particularly focuses on actual conduct of election on the ground at the polling station and at different levels. And then there the ECI has a lot of instructions. When we conduct the elections, there are huge volumes which have to be gone through. You have to be mindful of various instructions with the Election Commission. issues. And other than the APIC, which has been very, forcefully being, followed by various levels, every voter has to get an APIC as a voter identity. But then there are 12 different documents which are admissible as valid proof for a voter to vote in the polling station. From my own experience, because despite giving a clear, specific voter ID to the voters, crimes. And as far as the legal provision at the polling day is concerned, there is a specific provision as how the voter will come and vote in the polling station. We have also been voters, we have been voting in the polling station, and we are familiar with the experience which is taking, which we have seen. And Narinder sir has also mentioned about it, but again, how orderly the prescribe the right to vote confirmation before a person votes. He passes through a stage where even outside the polling station, his identity is generally checked, and once he enters, so there are polling agents and then the presiding officer, so they see whether his name is mentioned in the electoral roll, and then once his identity is established based on either the APIC or the 12 different IDs which have been, documents which have been allowed for him to establish an identity, only then he is allowed to. Earlier under there was a provision under section 171D for punishment from imprisonment. I was to check whether there is any provision in the new codes for impersonation. But under section 172 of the PNS, there is a provision for impersonation, and the prohibition for voting twice. That is the we see some votes sometimes in single digit and in double, but I always feel pity for these people because somebody else has voted against them and their vote is generally not counted. So, but there is a whole still have challenges in getting the IDs, particularly people who are who are old, who are not able to get this document. People who are homeless, particularly the urban homeless. But then you need to have internet connectivity in the polling station to ensure that the biometric system works. It will faster, make the system faster, but we as a country have to take a decision whether we want to go for this or not. And then why voters are not able to get registered, that focus I think I didn't see in my career also in the field. So there are challenges where people may not be able to get the document as identity, which is important. As I said, that homeless urban people or people who are living in remote locations, who are not physically fit, who can't come to the designated places, and people who are not on the digital platform, they are not able to access the information which is shared, and then people who may be I think there should be a focus on including the voter also from the electoral roll. There's a lot of focus on deletion also, and for the other department of the state government. We also need to know the vulnerability. I said people who are bedridden, people who cannot access these places from where they can get their IDs. And another important point I think is that we need to implement regular sensitivity training to the people involved with the electoral roll, particularly the BLO and the other staff who are connected with that. Just focusing on what kind of people get excluded is a vulnerable group. I think we should identify the groups through which we can approach them. Law and order in the polling station is ordinary, sensitive or hypersensitive. But the security is outside, discipline inside has to be maintained by the presiding officer. And disputes, and we have already spoken about that, about tender ballot and challenge vote, and code of conduct is also one issue. For example, if there is a senior citizen above 85, so there is a provision of home voting, so it has become very challenging for the returning officers to actually send so many parties on the ground. Inclusion of the left out. Maybe something more can be explored how better it can be done. Chief Sharma ji has already talked about this, that there are countries which purely depend upon. In order to ensure ease of identification at the polling station, I think statutory clarity, particularly people who are actually working on the ground, who are not election commission staff, who are not that sensitive, their need people are able to vote on the ground. Multi-document system and a fallback mechanism, which we already have spoken about it. And there should be an obligation and there should be a system where people who don't have ID, we should do it in a campaign mode to ensure that nobody, I think there is not much issue with that. As far as policy recommendations are concerned, the 12 documents which we are talking about have been just included in the ECI instructions. This is not somewhere, anywhere included in the legal framework. The state election office has been conducting best practices studying the good practices from different countries. So I think we should.
Also joining this conference in session second in hall number 3. If participants are interested to join that session, may go to the hall 3 at 3rd floor in second section.
Chauhan sir, DC Rana ji, all the officials and academicians who have joined these sessions virtually and in offline mode. This is a very important topic. If there is any error, I should be informed prior to the poll day. And what happens is that, in most cases, the voter reaches the polling station and then there is an issue regarding the identification, regarding the authenticity of the voter. Same thing happens with the polling team. So I start with this small presentation. It's a very small presentation covering. So as we all know, in Indian perspective, we have an indicator, which means any other document which is not listed in the 12 documents can be used for the purpose of identification. Minor variations with respect to epic, name, age. There is an example from Serbia. Very unique example. I have collected these examples because these are unique, these are different examples, something which we have not seen, which we have not heard. In Serbia, there is no polling team. There is ballot commission. What is a ballot commission? Members are nominated by the fantasy candidates. In United States, polling officials, there should be reasonability with respect to identity. These are some challenges. Photo or name mismatch, old epic cards, old ID cards, not updated.
Aggressive adopters of digitization. The largest identity project is made by India in the form of Aadhaar. India anyways maintains such a large, world's largest database, digital database of identities in the world. It should be a straightforward exercise for us to essentially link e-pics by sealing it with Aadhaar, deduplicating it, and ensuring that at voting time it is unlinked to the voter's vote. Therefore, also maintaining times. Thanks.
But I think you see integrating all data of epic into the Aadhaar card. Now, of course, the form does stipulate the Aadhaar number, and people are expected to voluntarily give their Aadhaar number. But that Supreme Court decision did not mandate the giving of a Dharma. Otherwise, that perhaps was one way, and maybe this example he gave of Serbia, they might be unitary countries, but in a federal country like ours,
becomes very difficult.
I would think it would be difficult for you to be able to vote for Himachal voting in Tamil Nadu for a constituency in Himachal. Would involve a lot of.
Right. I mean, this would definitely be a challenge.
Maybe
But
in a unitary system.
so, Deputy Election Commissioner of India back then, just when we were coming out of COVID,
By virtue of engagement in employment, does not cease to be ordinarily president of many years. It's a one from Kangra used to even be treated as an ordinary president.
और कोई यहाँ पे अपना प्रश्न, कोई क्वेरी?
72.83% with yes. 72.83% is the voting percentage for 2000 to 2005. It actually decreases with I think substantial with a substantial number. There's however a substantial decrease with 68.28%, and the way they look at participation, the way they perceive democracy, we are very different. The world is different, and that should that's how it should be. So even from that scenario, the different geographical region, or should I say the objective is also is always there. And why don't you compare your data, or why don't you want to do something? We are self-claimed guardians of democracy, and I see there's a problem which is applicable for all countries. So when we are actually looking for solutions, ground level. So why I really decisively don't say, because we have, but despite all the, fault lines, we have seen more than 75.
If there is an impersonation, bogus voters, there's the implication on the polling agent is much larger because they have to do a lot more checks. Duplicate enrollment, right? Now this is a pre-polling stage phenomena. Electors registered in more than one constituencies. They vote in one constituency and perhaps they ask somebody else, their relative, to vote on their behalf in some other constituency, and so on and so forth. Right? These indelible marks on the finger is a good deterrent, but there are ways where you can sidestep. These state photo records, right? I have provided an identity verification in a form of a photo in my EPIC card, which is 10 years old or 15 years old, right? And I have substantially changed in how I look, right? And therefore this will also add to the latency of the polling agent while doing manual oversight and performing identity verification. And finally, inclusion, right? So I attended Rajeev's talks in Hall 3. This inclusion is extremely important, right? Access, inclusion, and there are certain natural barriers for the disabled, for the elderly, for the marginalized, and whatnot, right? How do you address those at the time of polling booth-based voter identification? Right? With a single objective of reducing your latencies for identity verification alone. Now, what are the technology levers that exist, and what are the questions surrounding their use? And I would like to make this slide slightly interactive. I'm not going to give you all answers. You have more experience than facial recognition, right? So we keep talking about, you go on the internet, you use ChatGPT, Claude, whatever. Apply facial recognition right at the polling station, right? So this is a common solution that will crop up. Match a live capture to the electoral photo booth. Oh, I've also given you a question. Sorry, I think my animation is not set correctly. This is the question that I had wanted you to think about. It cannot be executed in autopilot mode because if you are using a facial recognition technology, it's a computer vision based algorithm where the best accuracy that you can hope to expect will never cross 90-95%. At 90 and 95% accuracy, your models or computer vision algorithms will misidentify 5% of your population. 5% in India's population terms is massive. Oversight. And that defeats the purpose. Because if there is a human in the loop, you want automation in the technology, but you are putting a human in the loop, the humans will end up taking as much time as they were taking before as a polling agent. So you do not meet your objective of reducing the latency times. The second big problem that's worth asking, I don't have any, is going to be 100% deterministic. And voting is far more important to rely on probabilistic systems. The second is biometric authentication, right? How do I confirm that my eligible voter is counted uniquely and allowed to vote only once? A lot of countries are using biometric authentication, so it's connected and working fine, is unable to recognize. It increases the latency during the identification process. And who's going to hold that data? Who's going to manage that data, right? Is it DPDP compliant or not, right? So all of these things have to be addressed. Role deduplication, this is not how address these reasonably well. This does not go away. This is a hard problem to address. We are not only, it's just plain cryptography. Something that UPI, Aadhaar, and these digital public infrastructures already use at scale, right? Or voting slips have to be amended a little to include information such as this. Digitally signed is a cryptographic signature which cannot be forged, right? And it can be verified in a microsecond level latency. To contain a voter ID, today's QR codes actually can contain almost 4 KB resolution image of the voter themselves. The speaker spoke about that voting slips could be augmented with which polling booth a particular voter is allowed to go and vote to. If that is included in your voting slip or this QR code wherever it is appearing, either in EPIC or voter slips, then through a simple QR code scanner, polling agent can scan the QR and immediately do a identity verification. Without voter having to invest anything on their part, and polling agents' time to verify the credentials get reduced massively. From today, when Election Commission of India decides that we are going to introduce remote polling booth-based remote voting protocols that allow migrant populations to vote for their domiciled constituencies in the constituencies in which they are currently living. If that were to be the case, then all of this technology starts making sense. Right, so I think this becomes slightly more operational. I will not get into it. Between a seeded database under the control of a constitutional authority, yet giving a guarantee to the voter that look, your data is the small video that I wanted to show. Some of my students had created a end-to-end verifiable verification technology which does very quick RFID.
CEO is Chief Electoral Office of Himachal Pradesh for sanitizing their databases, voter lists. Actually entering their names also differently. For example, Rajeev Sharma, in some other database Rajeev Sharma, in some other database RK Sharma. So different people with different identities were created to be verified, so that every time when a citizen logins to any application, his data, verified data should be automatically transmitted from this application to that particular application, so that there should not be any issue related to his identity or duplicity or bogus identifications. So unified social registry we have created. We have integrated also with Parivar register. Fortunately, there is a Parivar register already existing in Himachal Pradesh under Himachal Pradesh Panchayati Raj Act. So we leverage that act for creating this Parivar database. And we integrated with ration card also. Ration card beneficiaries are also there. E-Kalyan is your social welfare beneficiaries. InCare is your health beneficiaries, and land records are the landowners of in Himachal Pradesh. So we integrated all these databases, and While integrating these databases, we created a unique ID also for citizens, just like Aadhaar we created, because Aadhaar identifies an individual, but this same parivar India by scheme verification. So all the schemes which are as per their profile, suitable as matching as per the profile of the citizen, those get reflected in the system. This is also 100%. These also is your welfare pension beneficiaries, 8.36 lakhs, they are also seated. Electricity board around 25 lakh, the consumer IDs are there, around 24 lakh have been seated. PMI is a government database, human resource management, the section for that have been seated. Ration card, almost 100%, 69 lakh. Land records, 60 lakh. They have been integrated, seated with this. Apart from this, we have integrated this Government of India databases also. Ishram is your section for your Panavian sector database. We have integrated with our section.
Myself, Dharamshala Singh, and I am a doctorate fellow at the Central University of South Bihar. This research is co-authored with Professor Dr. Sharma of the Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. Today I am presenting education matter at all. From there, we introduce the 12 indicator framework that serves as our analytical tool. We then describe our scope covering 21 democracies spread across 7 world regions. Following that, I will present the global democratic quality context that shapes this legal system, that then move into our 3 core findings. After that, we examine regional highlights and we close with the key takeaway for policymakers and scholars. That no eligible citizen should be turned away at the polling booth. An access-oriented system prioritize an accurate electoral roll and avoid placing burdensome condition on voting day itself. How a country strikes this balance is not merely a technical question. It reveals the underlying philosophy and maturity of its electoral design. The countries we examine have made very different choices, and none of them is.
Thank you, sir. If any query, questions, answer.
The whole the crypto program that you have said to us. Can we also not think of something like a e-yatra, which is used at airports, that too also. Something of that sort of technology if we use for electrification also, for polling also.
Concept. And we say that a lot of digital repository we have now in our nation, and we say it is purely voluntary basis. Somebody who worked
cleaned digital electoral roll, and on the day of polling proper recognition, and then of course fallback mechanism. And I totally agree that when we have to start a reform, we have to first focus on say one polling booth in an area, and then when people will see that this intervention basically reduced the time of standing in the queue from 2 hours to 1 hour to only 10 seconds, then naturally people catch on. And of course it is dependent on like digital literacy and like mobile phones and all other infrastructure. So this was my point, that we, rather than speaking like on 2 spectrums of these things, there is sufficient I think like possibility of adopting a middle ground. Thank you so much.
फिर इलेक्शन कमीशन के विरोध में कुछ पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज और लोग सुप्रीम कोर्ट चले गए डाटा प्राइवेसी को लेके, और उसके बाद ये मैंडेटरी ना होके ये एक ऑप्शन के तौर पे वो हो गया कि अगर किसी वोटर को अपना आधार देना है तो वो अपना आधार एज एन ऑप्शन आप दे सकते हैं। तो अभी इस तरीके की कोई प्रैक्टिस नहीं हुई। अब एक और मैं देता हूँ। सेकेंड में आपको एक और इंस्टेंस बताऊंगा, नॉट फॉर इलेक्शन कमीशन ऑफ इंडिया बट दैट इज डन बाय स्टेट इलेक्शन कमीशन ऑफ बिहार। So they have used biometric data for identification of voters in their elections. Or recently they have done this election.
Expertise, experiences, and innovative perspective on enhancing the keys of voter identifications, while upholding the principles of accessibility, inclusiveness, transparency, and electoral details. Our sincere thanks are due to Election Commission of India, IIM, and International IDEA for collaborating institutions for successfully organizing this important international workshop. We acknowledge guidance and
for identifying electors. तो वो आधार के साथ साथ OCR को यूज कर रहे हैं और they are integrating all the data, voters data with OCR technology and biometric technology to identify voters. But that is not done by ECI. That is done by State Election Commission of Bihar. So offline methods, that's why because we have a large number of voters. This is the only instance we have seen using of OCR or biometric data for election purposes. But in ECI history, only there was one activity that was NERPAP that was happened in 2015.
so how it can be applied in rural areas? क्या rural area में smartphone areas restricted to the smartphones are not available. तो इसलिए तो अभी हम लोग पूरी तरीके से उस पर नहीं जा रहे हैं. We have offline methods. That's why because we have a large number of voters coming from rural background. That's why we have offline methods where we are stick with this. They are still using simple phones. अभी ये आगे इन फ्यूचर में डेवलप होगा. अभी तो देखा जाएगा. ठीक. थैंक यू.
शिमला से ताशीगंज तक मैंने वोटर अवेयरनेस राइड किया था और एटीट्यूड पे अपने आप ही चैलेंजिंग होता है पैदल चलना और वो इकलौता ऐसा पोलिंग स्टेशन है जहाँ पे इंटरनेशनल मीडिया की भी नजर रहती है क्योंकि वहाँ पे हर बार 100% पोलिंग होती है. तो मेरा ये मानना है क्योंकि मैंने आजकल हिमाचल के सभी ऑफिस में फेस रिकॉग्नाइज से आपकी अटेंडेंस होती है. तो व्हाई नॉट इलेक्शन कमीशन क्यों इसको करता है. हमारा टाइमिंग लंबी क्रूज होती है. कभी गर्मियों में इलेक्शन होती है तो उनको ये लगता है कि हमारा क्या पड़ेगा.
एक्चुअली इलेक्शन में हम लोग जो भी डेवलपमेंट है लीगल बेस पे पॉइंट 1. पॉइंट 2 टेक्नोलॉजिकल डेवलपमेंट चल रहा है. आज हमारे पास ECI नेट, वी हैव वन यूनिफाइड पोर्टल एंड ऑल्सो वी आर गोइंग टू इंटीग्रेट ऑल दैट डाटा विद दैट इन ECI नेट पोर्टल ऑल्सो. अब आज की डेट में अगर आपको इलेक्शंस में वोटिंग परसेंटेज चेक करने हैं तो आपको किसी टेलीविजन स्क्रीन में जाने की जरूरत नहीं है. If you want to get accurate voting percentage, just go to ECI net and get that data. So
क्या होता है कि हमारे साथ सिक्योरिटी होती है, हमारे लिए गाड़ियाँ आ रही हैं, हमें पोलिंग बूथ भी लेके जा रही हैं. ठीक है, उस दिन लेके जाते हैं. 3 पंचायत में हमें इलेक्शन करवाना होता है. वहाँ से एक पंचायत में हमें छोड़ के आए. फिर उसके बाद कोई नहीं पूछता है. उसमें इलेक्शन हो गया. उस दिन रात को रिजल्ट निकाला, 12 बज गए, 1 बज गए. उसके बाद कोई पता नहीं है, कोई गाड़ी हमें लेने नहीं आई. दूसरी पंचायत में हमने जाना है, हमें बैलेट पेपर्स एक साथ दे दिए गए तीनों पंचायत के. रात को हम कैसे जाएंगे, अगली पंचायत में कैसे पहुंचेंगे, वहां इलेक्शन करवाएंगे. तीसरी पंचायत में जाएंगे, रात को 2 बजे हम काउंटिंग करके निकल रहे हैं. अगले दिन फिर से वैसे जा रहे हैं. बिल्कुल थकान होती है, ना कोई रेस्ट डे है. 3 दिन पंचायत में इलेक्शन करवा रहे हैं. अगर ऐसा नहीं करना है, हमें कोई गाड़ी दूसरी पंचायत में जाने के लिए, तीसरे के लिए नहीं पहुंचानी है, तो पहली बार भी क्यों लेनी है. इससे इलेक्शन कमीशन का खर्चा बढ़ जाएगा. जैसे हम दूसरी पंचायत में जा रहे हैं अपनी गाड़ियां लेके, जो भी फैसिलिटी लेके हम जा रहे हैं, वैसे हम पहली बार में भी जा सकते हैं. ऐसा तो कुछ है नहीं. ब्रीफ आपकी बात समझ में आ रही है.
सो आई जस्ट लाइक यहाँ पर जितने भी लोग उपस्थित हैं उनको ये डिस्टिंक्शन आई जस्ट लाइक टू क्लैरिफाई कि जो इलेक्शन कमीशन ऑफ इंडिया है और उनके अंडर जो चीफ इलेक्टोरल ऑफिसर्स जो काम करते हैं, उनके ऑफिसर्स जो काम करते हैं, दे डू नॉट ऑर्गेनाइज पंचायत इलेक्शंस. सो आपका जो कंसर्न है वो स्टेट इलेक्शन कमीशन है ना. स्टेट इलेक्शन कमीशन एक इट्स अ टोटली डिफरेंट एंटिटी. Just for everybody's clarification, that election commission and chief electoral officers, their responsibility is to organize elections for the parliament and for the state assemblies. Right? So, आपका concern genuine है, but we would request you to take it up with the state election commission. We are not the competent authority for the panchayat elections.